Welcome to an episode of The Most Mediocre Computer Technician Who's Ever Lived. A few months ago, I got a desktop PC to upgrade from my mini computer that I was making all of my gaming videos on. The computer was cheap and able to do some light gaming, but it really wasn't close to as powerful as I needed it to be able to run any newer games that were coming out. And the games that I was able to play had to be played on the very lowest settings because that was all the system could handle. So I got a small form desktop PC that was a lot more powerful. It's running with a GTX 1080 Ti graphics card, a huge upgrade from the onboard graphics of the mini computer, and an AMD Ryzen 5600X 6-core CPU, which is a 22% increase in performance from the Ryzen 7 5825U that was in the mini computer. Played modern games super well, like Battlefield 6 that I was just showing off, but there was one problem. The power supply in it got way too hot. Like if you even got close to it, you would just melt. So although I liked this case because of how small it was, it fit well on my desk and it was pretty perfect for my room setup, it was time for an upgrade. I ended up finding this Corsair RM850E power supply open box on discount at Best Buy, so I quickly scooped it up, thinking it would fit inside of my case, but as you can see, that didn't really work out because it's the same size as the computer itself. So I decided to upgrade the case as well, hoping that the 6 extra fans would also help to provide cooling to the system. Picked up the Okeanos Aqua 7 case on Amazon. I had a really hard time deciding what kind of case I wanted. I looked at some with wood on them to match my room, one that I really liked because pink is my favorite color. I also looked at, it had a blue internal, but it didn't really match my room either. So I thought that this one was the cleanest design, and the black can go with anything really, depending on if I change my room or not. So then I began the expedition into my first case swap. First thing I needed to do was deconstruct the current case and take out all the parts that were going to be swapped. This was a simple process, but there were some parts that I made way more difficult than they should have been, just because I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm proud of myself because the whole time I did this, I only had to look online for a guide once, and that came a little bit later when I needed a sheet to look at the parts on the motherboard for some cable connectors, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. A lot of the difficulty that I faced came from not knowing exactly what to remove first to swap, and not knowing what plugs I should and should not remove. Like there is the flex cable for the GPU so that it could fit inside the case on the other side, and I didn't know that I could just disconnect it from the motherboard to make the removal way easier. But once I figured the tiny details out, it was super simple. After removing the main parts, I was ready to put them in my new case. It was right at this moment in filming that I realized my camera had turned off because the battery was dead, but fortunately it really didn't miss anything. I took the motherboard and screwed it in, same with the graphics card, which clicks right into the PCIe slot in the motherboard, and plugged the cables into the PSU, the power supply unit. Next came the difficult part of figuring out where all the plugs went and exactly how I was going to manage the bulk of all of the cables. To be completely honest, this was the hardest part of the whole build. It took over an hour of frustration to figure out where all the cables went, because not every cord included in the pack needed to be plugged into the power. Like how there were 2 SATA power cables for hard drives and SATA power, and I only needed 1, which I realized much later. Most importantly, I needed to figure out which cables needed to be connected first so that they all stayed organized and didn't get so bundled up that the case couldn't be put back on. I would also say that there was a lot of confusion for me over the fans, because there was one cable that had 2 branches. One of those offshoots had a tag that said not to plug it into the fan header, but being a total beginner, I didn't know if that meant to not plug it in at all, or if it was warning not to plug it into the wrong port on the motherboard. I ended up just not plugging it at all to make sure I didn't break anything or power on something that shouldn't have had power, and it works just great. So for all of you builders out there, don't plug it in, I guess. After doing some cable management and wrestling with the massive bundle of cords in the back, I was able to put the rear panel back on and fully complete the build. To my total amazement, it turned on and worked perfectly the first time, no problems, no rewiring. I was pretty shocked because normally when doing something new, there needs to be some touch-ups at least, but this just worked. I am super happy with the way that this turned out and would highly recommend this to anyone else who wants to change the performance or looks of your setup. It looks fantastic, and these
6 extra fans
keep everything as cool as possible. I'd love to do some upgrades to the system in the future, obviously like a more modern graphics card, because the one that I'm using is almost 10 years old, which is crazy to think that 2017 was almost 10 years ago. But I'd love to upgrade that and a new motherboard so that it doesn't look so small inside the case. But what I'm working with right now is extremely good for what I need and does perfectly fine. If you could think of anything I should add or upgrade, just let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video and enjoy the future videos made by this rig and through this new case. See you in the next video.